Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 56 of Club Moffat Talks. I am Joseph McNeely, and I am the instruction librarian here at Moffat.
I'm Ryan Samuelson. I'm the Associate University Librarian.
And today we are joined by a guest coming to us from, are you actually in your office at Texas Tech today?
I am.
Okay. Tell us what you do there.
Sure. Well, my name is Lane Mears. I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Leader and Culture Development at the Texas Tech University System here in Lubbock. Our office, the Office of Leader and Culture Development, does programs, workshops, coaching for students, faculty, and administration across the 5 universities within the Texas Tech system. So we focus on things like leadership, values. Immediately former chancellor was very big on values-based cultures and making sure each university within the system had developed their own values and deployed those throughout the system. And so we assist with that as well. But I've been on the job for about not quite 6 months, and it's been a lot of fun so far.
I know that we had a big push on our campus as we moved to a values-based culture and deciding specifically what those values were going to be, which did result in us having some nice swag. I believe I am currently wearing one of our values t-shirts. Um, but yeah, no, I have interacted with your department, some attending various webinars, and with you, with Jason, with Shelby, and I feel like it's always informative,
Yeah.
uh, often entertaining, occasionally inspirational, but in general, a good time. And segueing immediately into having a good time, um, let's talk about some things that we've been doing for entertainment. For what have we been reading? What have we been watching? Um, Ryan, do you want to start us off?
Sure, I'll start us off. I had a long conversation with a dear old friend of mine. We meet once a week. He's in my gaming group, and he encouraged me to watch the James Gunn 2025 Superman, which I have not done yet. So I actually did that this weekend. And I found it interesting. A lot of my worries were verified in the fact that I do think there's a bit too much going on in the film. I think it's being pulled in too many directions to somewhat, and that's one of my criticisms of Gunn's work overall. However, the reason I did turn into it is I did watch some YouTube commentaries on James Gunn's approach, and that convinced me to watch it. And I thought it was interesting. It is, I think, almost to its detriment, unfortunately. I think it is very much a response to the Zack Snyder Superman from several years ago,
Mhm.
and it's basically presenting a different version of Superman that well, I take that back. I think it's been seen on something like Superman and Lois, but I don't think it's been seen elsewhere in media. Again, Superman's a character that's been around for 90 years. There are multiple takes on the character throughout history, but it basically took Superman away from Zack Snyder's representation of him as a Messiah character and brought him more as he is supposed to be what humanity aspires to be. He is supposed to be the best of humanity instead, focusing on the humanist aspects of him rather than the divine aspects of him.
Mhm.
And I appreciate that because I think that's something that I think a lot of people there don't understand that was the original intention, I think, of the creators of Superman is to present him as a human figure, a character who's supposed to represent the best of humanity, as opposed to what most people see the character as is a divine, Christ-like figure. And that's fine. That's a fine way of presenting the character. But I think also it limits him somewhat because then it becomes about him sacrificing himself. And I don't think the metaphor works as well as the humanist metaphor in many ways.
Mhm.
And I thought James Gunn's approach was something that we necessarily haven't seen before in a lot of ways. And I thought it was a fresh take on the character. Anyway, that was my point. That was the only thing that came up this weekend. And again, there's nothing wrong with the Christ presentation of him, but it's a basically a top-down presentation of the character rather than a bottom-up presentation of the character,
Mhm.
so to speak. And again, it I thought James Gunn's presentation of him was something that a lot of people haven't seen yet, and I appreciated the work he did. Even though I found it a little too busy, a little too much going on, a little bit confused and muddled. But anyway, I like the film.
Okay. I I gave my review of it a month or two ago, and I stand by my review.
No,
Uh,
just remind me, I forget what you said.
my review, I believe my no spoiler review was I liked what they did with Mr. Terrific.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Uh, I have not been okay. I've been reading a book. Athena and I, and actually our daughter Caitlin, have been reading this book. The Bible Tells Me So, and it's been blowing my mind. I ought to pull it up and find the author. I believe the author's last name is Enns, Enns. Is it Peter Enns? Something like that. It's been blowing my mind though because it is challenging things that I believe. It's not challenging my faith, but it's challenging things that I believe, things that I thought that I knew. And it's like, oh, that doesn't mean what I thought that meant, or and like that. And that's been a little bit tough because I pride myself on being really smart, and so anything that makes me feel foolish is a blow to my pride. And and this book is doing that. Yeah. So that's been interesting and been a challenge. We're doing sort of it's kind of a cross between a book club and a Bible study thing that we're doing collectively with some other people reading this book and meeting periodically to talk about a chapter as we go through it. But it's been interesting. Um, so there's that. But I talked about that we had recently resubscribed to Netflix. We had let it go, but went back and did it, and we've been watching all of the Stranger Things previous seasons to be prepared for the new one. And we've now watched the episodes that exist for the new season. Some more episodes are dropping on Christmas Day as a present to us all. Um, and so we were caught up on that. But the other thing, we actually got a streaming service specifically so that we could watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade.
Hmm.
Because now that commercial television networks have made it impossible to watch commercial television without some sort of subscription service, we had to subscribe to one so that we could watch this, live show. But the one that we did, which is Peacock, um, so we have it for a month now, sort of as a trial basis. And so as going through there and finding other shows that maybe we would be interested in. And we've been watching this show called Poker Face with Natasha Lyonne, who I love. I think she's a great actress. And the whole premise is that she can tell when someone is lying. And because of that, she gets caught up in various uh, people uh, predicaments where people are lying, and she knows that they're lying and go, "Hey, you're lying about that." And people don't really like it when you call them out on the lies that they tell, and so that doesn't work out great for her, and she has to flee her hometown and travel across the world, getting in more trouble as she goes. But I've been enjoying that. Um, I think that's pretty much it for us. Lane, can you talk about what
Sure.
you've been watching or reading?
Sure, but just to, I was looking at that book that you mentioned, The Bible Tells Me So, and reading a little bit about it. I've not read it, first time hearing about it, but reading the book overview, it sounds interesting. Um, I many years ago took some seminary courses, and I know there was some ongoing maybe tension within Christian theology circles about the systematic theology and being this rigid, dogmatic understanding of God, and how he works versus more of the mystery. And I've definitely fallen on the side that, there's plenty of room for mystery in the faith, and not the maybe the extreme dogmatism. But I know it's something may have to check out. Um, I have not watched a movie. Well, no, I should say that. We do Friday night movie nights with my wife and the two boys we have still at home. But it's often kid movies. But as far as like for my purposes, I've never really watched a movie except on a plane in a long time. I tend to watch more series. Um, when I'm on the treadmill, I've been watching Only Murders in the Building, and I think one of y'all mentioned that last week. Really fun
Oh,
show.
you watched her show last week. Thank you.
Yeah. I did. I wanted to see, wanted to make sure I wasn't going to walk into a firing line or something. Um, no, but a fun show, really entertaining. And then more recently, I've been watching The Bear. Again, I'm not watching anything new. It's a lot of these old shows that are just now popping up on Disney Plus through the Hulu link. But enjoying The Bear so far. I think it didn't it win some awards for a comedy show. I don't find much comedy in
I
that
think
show.
Golden Globes, I think it won a
Yeah.
bunch of those.
That
Yeah.
sounds right. Yeah.
But no, it's intense. It's like I'm on the treadmill. It's like there's tension in the restaurant all the time. It makes my time on the treadmill go pretty quickly. Um, but yeah, interesting, the dynamics at play amongst the characters, and figuring out Carmen and the backstory with his brother, and his history in New York and at the nice restaurants. I'm anxious to see how that plays out. Reading, I tend to read heavy stuff and watch lighter stuff for whatever reason.
Mhm.
So the heavier stuff that isn't work related. The best books I think I've read recently are like All the Light We Cannot See. Interesting book from a few years ago. Just combined the wonder with menace, kind of in the setting of World War II, the wonder, this blind girl discovering the world, and this kid growing up to be a Nazi soldier. Um, and then Small Things Like These, kind of a real short book that they made a movie out of with Cillian Murphy about a Catholic in Ireland, I think, struggling with seeing some injustice in this small community at a convent, and the tension between should he act that might jeopardize his standing in the community or not. Pretty heavy. The movie was very, very heavy and somber. The book was a quick read, but the movie was a little bit too heavy for me. Um, so yeah, then I was thinking about that and talking about this show, that dynamic, that I tend to read heavier things and watch lighter things. I'm not sure why that is, but that's kind of what's been on my entertainment plate of late.
Uh, a book that I have sitting on my shelf that I haven't picked up again recently. I had read through it a year or two ago, and then asked for it for Christmas and got it, and then haven't reread it since I got it that Christmas. But it's called The World Without Us,
Hmm.
and it's science based, and it's not a fiction book really, but it's talking about how quickly nature would reclaim different aspects of the planet if humans just stopped being here. So it like talks about how long it would take for the asphalt to break down, or how long concrete would last. Uh, to be these recognizable man-made things, how long would they remain recognizable?
Like
Uh,
Twinkies.
and it's interesting. And it was talking about some things that we've actually been able to witness, like there was a an elevated train station that was shut down in Chicago or New
New
York.
York. It's New York,
Was
I
it in
think.
New
Yeah.
York? And talking about how quickly that was claimed by plants. How it just like, and it was, you could watch it happening in real time, over just a few years, that it
Hmm.
became this little garden spot because people stopped being there. Uh, and then the whole book is talking about that phenomenon.
Yeah, it's an older book. I remember reading it a decade or two ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I believe that I encountered it initially when I was still working with interlibrary loans here a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, and was intrigued by it, and then sought out getting my own copy to read through.
Hmm.
Yeah, I either did an interlibrary loan request or I read the version we have here at Moffat
Yeah,
Library several years ago.
yeah,
Mostly because there was a series on like the Discovery Channel which spun out of that idea. Um, and so I was interested in the book that had spawned
yeah,
the documentary series.
yeah.
Interesting.
I One of the things that interested me about it was interesting to me about it is that because I write stories and I also game master uh, tabletop role-playing games. So for story building purposes, I thought that it was interesting to be a thing about, okay, well, there was a city here and the people aren't here anymore, and it's 100 years later. What does that city look like? And this book gives me some guidelines about how to answer that question. So it was a sort of a placeholder in my brain to go, okay, this is where you can find that information.
What I
Interesting.
thought was interesting is they said, I believe this is from the book, they said the most lasting thing is something I would have never thought of before. It's the fact that after they've done drilling oil wells,
Hmm.
they use it as a storage device for all sorts of noxious, toxic chemicals. And so there are these underground reservoirs of stuff that shouldn't be there, basically. And because they're so far down, the book, at least the author of it, came to the conclusion that would be the sort of thing that would be the last fingerprint, so to speak,
Hmm.
of humanity is all of these underground reservoirs that we've been using for toxic and noxious chemicals and gases to keep them away from people in these old oil wells, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
Again,
think
something I wouldn't have thought of.
yeah,
sure. I think yeah, climate obviously would dictate somehow this our remnants would stick around. I most recently lived in Amman, Jordan, in a previous career before I joined Texas Tech, and Amman's one of those places with thousands of years of human history, just everywhere you look. The capital, Amman, within 3 hours is Petra, within, an hour is the Dead Sea. But there's a place where my kids are into Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts had a hike about 45 minutes from the capital, elevated area, nice, one of the few wooded areas near Amman. But as we're driving down from the wooded area, from the mountaintop, we passed this, it looked like it was stone structure, nothing protecting it. It's just there on the side of the road, and you drive down, and I asked a friend who's Jordanian a little bit about this, and it's like a 3,000-year-old dwelling just sitting there by the side of the road because the climate it's still there, but there's it's such a rich human history there that it's not even protected because there's much more renowned sites all over the country. But interesting tidbit, something like that would have been, cordoned off and admission fee to get into it if it was in the US somewhere, but
yeah.
lovely place.
That's a that is a strange thing that I've specifically noticed in America with the way that we handle things that we think of as old. And when we think of something being old, typically we think of something that's a couple of 100 years old. It's like, hey, you can't touch that. It's 200 years old. Versus places, these much older societies where there are things there that are 2,000 years old or more. And
Hmm.
you're like, oh, yeah, this is 2,000 years old. Want to walk on it? And it's
Exactly.
just,
Oh, it's worse than that. One of the reasons a lot of those places that are the old structures don't exist anymore is because it was stone it was mason stone. And so what would happen is, oh yeah, the ruins has all those mason stones, let's go build a building. And they'd show up and cart away all of the stone to make a new building out of it, basically. So
yeah.
and that's what happened with a lot of Hadrian's Wall actually in England.
Hmm.
Basically it went away because people were making houses and barns out of it, basically.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was the story in Jordan. There's a city that
Yeah.
was one of the Decapolis in Jordan, probably 45 minutes from the capital. One of the oldest living settlements, human settlements in that part of the world. But yeah, there are parts missing of the walls and the structures because the residents, because there's a big city built around this now, would just take it and use it to help construct their houses.
Mm. Yeah, it's just a funny way of the difference that we look at things.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, here's the thing though too. You mentioned that, but I also know there's places like St. Louis, for example, and there's a bunch of hills in St. Louis. And what people don't realize about those hills is they are artificial. They are ancient Native American temple sites, basically, where they raised up the earth. But it's just a hill. It's just a hill in St. Louis now, basically.
yeah,
So there are always exceptions.
sure, sure. There was a science fiction book that I read, and I can't recall the name of it. But it was, I believe, set in the city of Boston, and it was science fiction. It was set in the future, some number of years, and they had done a thing where they had built on top of older structures, and then something had happened, and the bottom area had flooded. So old Boston was basically underwater, and they had just built new Boston on stilts on top of it.
I want to say, I forget if it's Portland or Seattle, but there was an earthquake. A big section of the city like fell down and they just built on top of it. And so you can go to, I think it's Portland. I think you can go to
Mhm.
parts of Portland and there's an entire city underground because they just built on top of the old ruins.
Yeah.
So that's based on actual fact of what happens in places.
Yeah, I for sure believe that it would happen. Well, I think that we've done that with some areas where there was like marsh or swamp land where we tried to build a structure there and it sank and said, "Hey, that building sank. Let's try it again." And you just keep doing it until you have two or three buildings stacked up in the swamp, and then you get enough, solidity that you can actually build on it.
That's
Isn't
direct
that
from
part of the
Monty
plot
Python and the
of
Holy
Monty
Grail.
Python and the Holy Grail? But okay.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking, right?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Uh, it does put a whole different perspective on the Lady of the Lake. It's like she actually just still lives down there, got a little air pocket, the furnace where she smelts her iron still works, and she's like, "Yes, I'll bring you your sword, just a second."
I'll just say that a watery tart distributing scimitars is no basis of a government.
I,
Honestly, it's not a bad choice. You know, we the when you look at other ways to choose a leader, it's not the worst.
I'm proud to say that most of my kids can quote most of that movie.
That's just good parenting.
Yeah, absolutely. No.
I have that with my kids sometimes. I'll make some 1980s pop culture reference and my kids won't know what I'm talking about, and I'll just look at them and be like, "I failed you. I'm so
Hmm.
sorry."
Yeah. I started with my son. My youngest is 14 now, but over 2 or 3 years ago, I started showing him, and when he'd have a sleepover, some of his friends, some of the old 80s comedy movies, Spies Like Us and um, Airplane, Top Secret, all those movies, just so he's got that, Naked Gun, the basis for my sense of humor.
Yeah. Yeah. That could lean into some territory that you don't necessarily want to explore when you go down that rabbit hole of, okay, these are the 10 movies that made me the person that I am today, and you start listing them and go, oh no, you should not watch that.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, yeah. There are those as well, for sure.
uh, yeah, I think I believe that we are all roughly of the same generation, and I do think that that was a hallmark of it, of growing up too fast.
Hmm.
Uh, and I don't know. I don't know that our parents were just really absentee, or if they just didn't really care, or if they were just that busy. It's like, they 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 were out of spoons and didn't have any to spend on us. Uh, Perhaps.
But I think it's probably a combination. And it was, cable TV at one point was
Yeah.
a fairly new
Mhm.
technology that maybe my parents didn't appreciate all that was available at the remote through cable TV. Kind of like with us with internet and our kids, kids now is like it's tough to monitor what they're looking at. But yeah, there were certainly things that I was able to watch that I shouldn't have at a certain age. I was watching horror movies at 8, 9, 10 years old. Saw Caddyshack when I was probably 12. Um, and yeah, yeah, think about those movies fondly, some of that stuff fondly, but now I think there's no way I would show my 14-year-old these.
And we forget also the rating systems was different. I mean,
Yeah.
PG-13 didn't exist. I believe the movie Beastmaster was a PG film, actually, believe it or not. It's got full frontal nudity, it's got death scenes, it's got blood and gore. Um, but it was a PG film, so uh, it, things change over time. But yeah, um, I don't know. My parents were always of the opinion, let's expose him to everything. If he's got any questions, we'll him ask questions, basically. So,
Hmm.
um, I don't know. I turned out, I guess, okay. But again, it was a different. We're going to talk a little bit of Gen X here, and I've taught
Yeah.
classes on Gen X. It was a different style of parenting, and it was a time when, as you mentioned, maybe too busy. It was a time when the divorce rate was at its highest peak, so there's a lot of single parent families out there. There was a lot more dual incomes going on. I know with my parents, both of my parents would leave before I'd go to school, and they would come home long after I had come home for school. That's the generation of the latchkey kids. We were it's just a fact of life of that type of generation is that as you said, the parents were busy a lot of times. I mean, it's easy to say that we were neglected or we were left to our own devices or that we were feral children or whatnot. But the truth of the matter is, the the nuclear family of the 1950s and the previous boomer generation it was basically over at that point, and the nature of how parenting was changing very rapidly, and I think they did their best. They tried to keep up as they could, basically. But there wasn't a lot of guidelines to them on these changes, and there wasn't a big support net of the community or family or whatnot to help them out in those situations as well. And I think that is a factor to it. That being said, Generation X is the most broken of all the generations. Again, I do teach a class on it, and
Really?
if they've done studies, and we are the most jaded and cynical of all the generations overall as a generation, and I think that reflects a lot of the upbringing. And again, also the attitude of Generation X is very much very independent, very not wanting to work together with groups, always trying to do stuff on our own. Well, we are very self-reliant and self-survivalist,
Yeah.
which is both good and bad. But that being said, we also tend not to ask for help. Again, I've done lots of studies on this. I did lots of research for the class where I'm talking about the 80s and the Gen X classes. I could do, like I said, I've taught entire classes on Gen X and what it meant to grow up during the 80s. But since you went on the topic, I thought I'd mention
Yeah.
some of it. Again, there are good and bad aspects to it, but yeah, the Gen X generation also we're the forgotten generation. We're the first generation in American history where we never were the primary generation. Usually, most generations, as the older people in the generation die out, the new generation becomes the dominant generation. Didn't happen with Gen X. They went straight from boomers to millennials, skipping over our generation as the most populous and influential generation there is. That being said, there is an entire industry based on Gen X nostalgia out there. I mean, the films that we've talked about, the films that we watched in the 80s. Yeah, there's a huge market in media, in toys, in just pop culture based on what the Gen X generation grew up with, basically. We were the generation that the basic created franchises to some extent.
And some great music, man. All that
Oh yeah.
angst displayed itself in the grunge movement, a lot of the, post-punk and um yeah, I'm right there with you. By the way, Joseph, Ryan and I went to the same high school 1 year apart in
Yeah.
Dallas.
I I was informed of that,
Were
and
you?
mostly it just amused me.
It's
Uh,
interesting. JJ Pierce has actually popped up with some other people too. There was a student worker I hired several years ago who was also a graduate of JJ Pierce too. So it's just you forget how small the universe is sometimes.
Yeah.
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 There's a student who's attending classes here, but works at the pharmacy where my family gets our medicines. So she recognizes me because she's one of those good students that actually uses the library. So it's like, oh, I know you. You're the librarian guy. So since she realized that she also sells me medicines at the pharmacy, now when she walks by my window, which she does occasionally, she'll tap at my window and wave,
Hmm.
uh, which is kind of fun. It is a weird thing because I never really wanted to be like rich and famous, but I did want to have enough money to cover my expenses and pay my bills on time and occasionally be recognized at the grocery store. And honestly, I'm there. I made it, you know. Yeah, I'm living the life.
I'll just do another shout out. Chris Hansen, the chair of the chemistry department here at MSU. We knew each other as little kids. Our parents were friends, actually.
Oh, wow.
I make a joke that yeah, I slept with him because we did
I'm
share a bed one time when we were 12, I guess, and out camping. But
I'm sure he appreciates that.
he
It's
probably
like
does
I
not
tell
appreciate that
everybody.
joke. But anyway,
Oh no, that's great. Oh,
um, anyway. So again, it's always interesting. Again, we forget how many people that we know or that we affect or that we touch upon throughout our lives, especially when we get to people to our age. The
Yep.
fact that yeah, the world is smaller than we think it is. Let me put it that way.
Yep.
We tend
yeah,
to think of the world as this huge thing that we don't have in common with, but that's not true. There's always these interesting ties between people that you never think of.
yeah.
It's over Thanksgiving, I was in the Dallas area. My mom's still there. She's in Frisco. My wife's parents are in the Plano area. So we were back there for the week, and I met up with two of my best friends from became friends in 8th grade. So the three of us had a nice lunch. I'm in touch with one of them pretty regularly. One of them I haven't seen in a while, but having lived overseas for 16 years, it is so nice to have those relationships of people that knew me at, 13, 14 years old and just know all the good, bad, and ugly, and we're just buddies still. It's nice to have that I don't know, nostalgia, that stability to be able
Yeah.
to hang out with people like that again.
And that may be a factor of Gen X too, because I mentioned before a friend of mine that told me to watch the Superman movie. I met him when I was 13. I mean, I met him in the eighth grade, basically. So it's interesting that I'm still keeping contact with him on a weekly basis. All these years later, it's just,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and as you said, they know you better than anyone else.
Yep.
Those type of people.
I,
Yep.
I hear you. I
But
well, there is a thing. It's like because we, I think, should grow and change as we go through life. I know that there are people who knew me 40 years ago, or even 30 years ago, or even 20 years ago that do not know me.
sure.
I am not that person.
Yeah.
I would have the person that I am now maybe wouldn't associate with those people,
Sure.
or do some of the things that I did, or say some of the things that I did. I have a lot of guilt about bad things that I've done in the past. And I know that I'm the bad guy in some people's stories of their lives, or for whatever reason, and deservedly so because of the bad things that I did then. Nothing that warrants jail time, but still
Sure.
unkind words, unkind actions, things that happened along the way. Uh, and I'm very glad that I'm not that person
Yep.
anymore. But I have run into a thing that happens, and honestly, it happens a lot with family members. You have this expectancy of who the person you're interacting with is that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with who they are now.
Right.
It's like this
Hmm.
echo chamber image of the way they were the last time you encountered them, or maybe the first time you encountered them. And it's I feel like it's really actually grossly unfair.
Hmm.
I concur. I mean, I think what distinguishes, my lunch with these two guys is that we've stayed in touch. I mean, they knew like maybe the raw materials of what
Mm,
I was like at 13, but we stayed in touch over the years and they've seen these transformation, these growths. And so they know me because
mm,
of they've seen me at all these different phases. If I saw someone that I knew in eighth grade hadn't seen in 40 years, they wouldn't have any idea my
yeah.
journey. But I hear what you're saying, Joseph, not to
And
diminish
and
it.
and honestly, that is the difference. If
Yeah.
you met someone in junior high and you actually kept in contact with
Yep.
them over the years and have maintained that relationship with them, have
Yep.
had lunches with them or weekly gaming sessions or whatever over that time period, then they've been there for the journey with you. They've
Yep.
watched you grow and change. So they do actually still know you. And that is different. And I absolutely concede that.
Yep.
Yes.
I wish you'd talk to my friend who's a father of three grown children at this point,
Uh-huh.
all in college. Because whenever I talk to him, he reverts right back to the 13-year-old self with the bad fart jokes and
Totally
all
us,
of the,
dude.
yeah.
Same with us.
Yeah, I
Same.
I recently, like just a few months ago, caught myself doing that, running into my brother. My brother was at an event that I didn't know he was going to attend, and I reverted into this weird 1980s version of myself, and I realized I was doing it and could not stop. And it was difficult because I would prefer. I know that we wear different hats, we have different responsibilities, different jobs we have to do. I don't want to wear different masks. I
Right.
don't want to be a completely different person depending on who I'm dealing with. Now, I understand that you have to meet people where they are, and the whole world doesn't need to know everything about you. The whole world doesn't need to know all of your deepest, darkest secrets. But you can present a real version of yourself in every circumstance. And I want to work toward that, and it's something I'm trying to do, but I'm not there yet.
There is downsides to that. I'm a person who's tried to do that my entire life, and there are downsides to that. People tell me I'm brutally honest, and they say it's to my own detriment a lot of times. So just be aware of that fact as well.
Well, sure. And I mean, the problem with that, and of course there are people who are overly sensitive or who just don't receive criticism of any kind well. There are people like that. But I feel like typically you can be honest in a kind way. I think that probably there are people that you're being honest with in a kind way, but they're so unused to it. It's like, why are you being so mean to me?
Yeah.
And are accusing you of brutal honesty. But it's absolutely possible to be honest, without the brutality. You don't have to draw blood just to tell someone the truth, you know, uh, metaphorically.
On your point, Joseph, I mean, I, I, I'm I feel like I want to push back a little bit that it may not be putting on trying to be somebody else. I think the way I'm thinking about this is when I'm with those friends of mine from when I was 13, it's safe.
Mm.
It's safe to have the juvenile jokes or thoughts that come to my head and express them because they knew me when that was just how we talked. I'm still that way, but there are, as an adult, and I don't think I'm putting on a face. It's just that I need to have, I have a filter thinking, well, that's not appropriate for this context. And so I'm not going to be, my goofy sense of humor is going to come out in a different way, a little more appropriate way than it would be around my friends I knew when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, there are people that, may have put on different clothes for to appear someone they're not, but we can be genuine into who we are and true to who we are and act more mature in one place. I don't think it's inconsistency
No,
necessarily.
as long as you're maintaining, like you said, being your genuine self, because it is a thing where, like, you should be able to talk about a topic that you're interested in, whatever that topic it is. You should be able to talk about that with someone who has a doctorate in the field, someone in the bachelor's program, someone in high school, all the way down to like a toddler or an infant. You don't use the same words or the same stories when you're talking to those different levels of people, but you can still talk about this thing that you're knowledgeable in, this thing that you're passionate about. And all of those conversations will be real, but you are meeting your audience at the level that they are, you know. And I think that that applies to basically all aspects of your life. So it's a thing where as long as you're staying genuine to yourself, as long as there's no part of you that goes, what you just said is something that you don't believe.
Hmm. Yeah, I concur.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's where I
yeah,
am.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow, this has gotten deep.
That's good.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, just some folks sitting around talking.
Yeah, yeah.
This might be the most philosophical episode that we've done so far. Anyway.
I don't know. Uh,
We have done 56, so we have talked lots of different subjects, but
You
yeah.
know, just thinking about this, tying it with back, I'm a big music guy. In fact, I'm more into music than movies.
Mhm.
yeah.
But when I'm listening to music, whether it be when I'm doing dishes or in the gym or something, I do find myself listening to the stuff of my adolescence
Yeah.
because of the even times maybe not healthy emotions tied up in that, just to remember, and whether it be Nine Inch Nails or New Order or, you know, Stone Roses, that type of stuff. It's all like there's so much that comes with music and ties back into who we are that, um, oh, powerful. And it's good for us to remember the
Yeah.
good and the bad of growing up, and because it's how it shaped us, and not to divorce ourselves from that. Because I think when we divorce ourselves from how we grew up or the things we felt, that's the leap into maybe not being authentic.
Mhm. Mhm. I I think that music is really powerful, and I think that really grabbed onto music when I was in my high school years. And there are still people that I think about from high school that I think about in a way that's tied to the music that I know that they liked. Like, I had a friend who very much liked Pete Townsend,
Mm,
and I have a friend who very much liked Jethro Tull, and I had a friend who very much liked Pink Floyd. And I feel like that just me saying those statements puts an image in your head of what those people might have been like, or the
sure.
other things that they might have been interested in. In high school, my album was Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell, you know? So it's just that thing. But I agree that I do still find myself listening to music that I enjoyed, music that I thought was that was popular during my high school, early college years. And like that particular album, I listened all the way through at least once a week. There was a time when I probably listened through once a day. And there are still songs on that album that I know all of the words to
Yeah, of course.
because it's in my brain.
Yep.
Um, and I love the fact that music can still connect you that way. It's a very powerful trigger to bring
Yep.
you back to that place and time, maybe when you first heard it, or the emotion of it,
Yep.
and it's
Yep.
just permanently tied into your memory, uh,
Yep.
beautifully.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even when
It's
those
interesting you
memories are
bring that
painful.
up because it was the same thing with me and my friends. We were all prog rockers. Of course, that's a term I didn't even realize existed until I was in my 30s. But yeah, Tony Trout was into Rush. Mike Levy was into Jethro Tull. I was the Yes guy. I
Mm.
mean, it's very interesting you bring that up because, yeah, each one of us knew a certain group and had all the albums of the other group. We liked the other groups as well, but each of us had our own specialization, I guess you'd
Yeah.
say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting and that's also interesting too, because I'll bring this up as well. One of the things I think that makes Gen X a little unique is I think we're the one of the last few, not truly monocultures, but more monocultural-ish. I think one of the things that you get nowadays is there's so much out there, and young people have access to so many different types of media as far as music goes. You'll come across someone who's only 19 years old, but is a huge Beatlemania guy, or you'll come across someone who likes watching Bollywood films from the 1990s or something like that. I mean, there's so much to choose from anymore. And I think we're one of the last generations that had sort of a monoculture, had that cultural touchstone, which was, you talked about the movies that you wanted your kids to watch, the comedy movies. Those are all movies I saw. Those are all movies I'm quite aware of and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the things that doesn't really exist anymore is that shared culture to some extent that I don't think you see as much. I find a lot with younger people, they're all in their own little world, so to speak, their own little, and that's not necessarily completely true, but I find, yeah, there's a lot of people who are in their own little comfort zone, their own little safe space, as you mentioned, and they're very terrified to leave that area to experience things outside of what they're used to.
Yeah. I I feel like I agree with you, but with the caveat.
Yeah, I just threw it out there. I might be completely off there, but I think
Well,
it's
no, I think that even even as we were growing up, there was maybe what was most popular, and those things that were maybe most popular were part of pop culture, and people were sort of just generally aware of it. But there were people who were even then involved in these little niches
yeah.
that I was completely unaware of. You know, where I'd be talking to someone and they'd tell me what album they're listening to, and they'd say the name of an artist that I had never heard of. And then I'd be all like, oh, I don't know who that is. And they'd play me a song. It's like, oh, okay, is this a new artist? It's like, no, this is like their fifth album, you know. And that happened not just in music, but also in film and television and books, where there were things that were just outside of our circle of experience.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there was, I don't know, the 51 percentile that created that sort of monoculture that you're talking about, that kind of shared experience. But there's a lot of stuff that I just never saw. And
Hmm.
it's like, oh, there's this really popular thing from the year you graduated high school. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of that. I've never seen that. I don't know what that is, you know? So so there's that.
Yeah.
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 Hmm. Where'd you go? Where'd you grow up, Joseph? We're in,
That's an unfair question. My father was Air Force,
yeah, that's right.
so yeah. Uh, I spent the majority of my young life in Texas, but I also lived in Europe and Ohio and in various cities across the state of Texas.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah. Because I'm even sure, the places we grew up, I think, impact the types of music that were around us, the things we were listening to and watching.
yeah,
We grew up in the Dallas area, then went off to Austin, to UT, and that certainly exposed me to a whole
yeah,
new, you know, blues and the alternative and stuff that I probably wouldn't have gotten into in Dallas as much. So I think that probably plays into it as well.
yeah, yeah. It's you can't appreciate something you've never been exposed to.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, MTV only played like 120 different videos, basically. So, um, I think we all
Over
saw
the
those
30
same
years they
120
were
videos.
it was like a, yeah,
I guess is the point I'm trying to make. I guess I don't know what the point I'm trying to make. I guess I'm trying to point out that one of the things I got from my 80s class that I taught, and it still haunts me, is the professor I was teaching with asked the students, "You don't seem to be liking these books that we're doing." And the students like, "No, they're full of garbage people with garbage ideas. We hate these books." And he's kind of like, "Well, I can't. You guys are mostly going for your English degrees. I'll just tell you right now, all the great literature of the world has garbage people doing garbage things in them, basically." But he basically asked them, "What do you do with people who have different opinions than them?" They say, "Oh, we cut those people out of our lives."
Wow.
And that scared me.
Yeah.
That type of mentality scared me. And it did one of the students as well. One of the students kind of freaked out about that as well. But that seemed to be the opinion. And this was, I want to say, 7 years ago. This class was, but
Wow.
they were very much, oh yeah, we don't deal with anything we don't agree with. We just cut that out of our lives completely.
Ryan, that makes me think that Jason and I are doing a session for this Polaris Leaders Program, senior leaders across the system once a month. The one this Friday is on trust and psychological safety. And one of the things I'm emphasizing is trying to define what psychological safety is, because I think it can mean different things to different people. For some people, it can mean that, yes, I need to block out anything that's going to upset me. When in reality, it's creating an environment where people are safe to engage in dialogue and to disagree. And I think this is, I'm new to higher ed, but from the outside looking in prior to working here, I felt like that's something a lot of universities have gotten wrong, trying to create these places of psychological safety that are just everything that might raise your ire or disagree, let's block it out. That's not psychological safety. That's the
Well, it's
opposite.
easier. I mean, it's what it comes down to. It's an easier set of rules to develop and establish. And you're right. What it does is it makes everything the same, and it makes everything with no real value to them to some extent. Also, unfortunately.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're not preparing people for the real world.
Yeah.
In that respect.
Yeah. That's one of
Well,
those sad things that we've seen with education in America, where someone has a good idea and then they decide to approach the good idea in a way that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like the No Child Left Behind was a good idea. And what it should have led to was higher wages for teachers, more staff, a smaller student to teacher ratio so
Mm-hmm.
that teachers could actually teach their students and make sure that everyone was getting it. And instead of doing that, they were like, hey, let's just give everybody a passing grade.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of creating a safe space, you know, and that not be okay, well, let's make sure we have plenty of counselors on hand. Let's make sure that we are able to discuss a wide variety of opinions and speak about that in a calm, rational way so that everyone has a chance to voice their opinion and everyone's voice is heard. And instead of doing that, they're like, let's make sure there's only one voice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we're reaping the results of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, on
Uh,
that sour note, we're coming to about the end. I'm usually the one that tells uh um Joseph or his predecessor Chris that it's about time to start wrapping up, and it's about time to start wrapping up.
yeah. Uh, Before we do start wrapping up, Lane, is there anything that you had really wanted to talk about or mention today that you didn't get a chance to talk about?
No, I mean we could talk about lots of things, but no, nothing's burning for me to share. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys, and it's been fun conversation.
We very much appreciated having you, and we almost always offer our guests the opportunity to come again some other time, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, and do a little check-in, see how things are going. And we certainly invite you to come again some other time, and we'll do a final farewell in just a minute. Before we do that, I want to close out by talking about things that are going on in our area here locally in the Wichita Falls area. The Wichita Falls Symphony Orchestra will be performing their festive program, Sounds of the Season, on December 13th at 7:30 at the First United Methodist Church, or for something completely different, starting at 9:30 on the 13th. The Wichita Falls Brewing Company will have live music from B-Side. If you do attend that, please tell Lalani we said hi. Chris would have mentioned this, so I'm going to. You can check out the Electric Critters lighted Christmas display at Riverbend Nature Center on the 19th and the 20th. Area band directors will serve as conductors for Tuba Christmas at Aiken Auditorium on Saturday, December 20th at 3 in the afternoon. The closing night for our Fantasy of Lights display will be Saturday, December 27th. Lucy Park is hosting a New Year's park run at 9 a.m. on January 1st. And the last thing I'm going to mention today is the Texas A&M Singing Cadets will have a concert on Thursday, January 8th in Aiken Auditorium at 6:30. If you'd like to have more information about the things that I mentioned today and other local activities, please check out the events section of the MSU Texas homepage and the calendar at discoverwichitafalls.com/events. Of course, if you have any events you'd like us to announce, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for any or all of us, please send an email to library@msutexas.edu. Okay, well, that being said, Ryan or Lane, any final thoughts before we depart?
I like the fact that we can just talk about anything on these podcasts. I mean, I think it hasn't done us a lot of I don't think it necessarily a lot of people tune into our shows because we don't have a theme, we don't have a thing that we talk about. But I love the fact that we get a different person on here every week, and we can just talk about anything we have on our mind. And it's interesting some of the rabbit holes we go down. And I just want to say I appreciate you being here, Lane, and letting us go down one of these rabbit holes today. We kind of meandered all over the place, but I kind of enjoy it, and I like the fact that we can do stuff like this on our show. And it's interesting for me because every episode that we do is a little bit different than every other episode we do, and I think that's one of our strengths, even if it doesn't get people tuning in every single week, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I agree.
And
It's been fun.
yeah, great to have you, Lane. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate you. If you really hated it, you can blame Jason. He told me to call you. Um, but really, thank you for being here. Thanks for talking with us. And for those of you out in our audience, thank you for being here with us. And we will catch you again in January. Bye for now.
Take care.